Thank you for tuning in to Love in Your Hands with Cynthia Clark, the podcast about how to live life with love. This podcast is sponsored by loveinyourhands.com, the place to go to find long-lasting love using the most innovative and accurate algorithm based in scientific palmistry. Tired of superficial connections? Start your free soulmate connection membership today at loveinyourhands.com. Now here's your host, Cynthia Clark, palm reading consultant and compatibility expert. Hi, thank you for joining us, everyone. I'm Cynthia Clark, and I am excited to share ways that you can live life with love. And we all need more love in our lives. Let's face it, we can never have too much.
That's the truth.
But we sometimes have difficulties and conflicts that come up. And this is actually going to be today's topic. And I want to start out with a little palm reading lesson because, of course, your hands reflect everything about who you are. And one way that you can tell if you have a deep emotional trauma, which oftentimes will come out either as sorrow, deep sorrow, or rage. We call it the Neptune ring, and it is located at the bottom of your hand. By the way, this is a minor marking in your hand, so not everybody is going to have this marking, but I want you guys to understand the realm of Neptune, because Neptune is the crossroads in your palm from your conscious to your subconscious. Okay, so you can think about the god of the sea, and this is Neptune. Okay, it's going to be at the very bottom of your hand. It's going to be right in the center. Okay, so we've got the conscious side, which is over here towards the thumb. We've got the subconscious side, which is over here towards the little finger. And this little bottom section here is the realm of Neptune, or also called your Neptune mount, which is mounts are just little bulges that show up in your hands. So if you have something called a Neptune ring, it's going to be a minor line that actually looks like a little upside down, like a frown. You can think of it like that. So it's going to be like a half moon just in that section. Okay, so if you happen to have a Neptune ring, that shows you've got some deep issues that need to be addressed, and you need to do some healing work around that. So that is today's palm reading lesson. And now I'm really excited to introduce today's guest. We have Rich Heller, who is a conflict coach. We definitely need that in the world, don't we? Especially in relationships. And he actually works with people who are in high conflict. So in other words, when that Neptune ring is really raging, he helps people with that. And he also performs marital mediation with couples. So thank you, Rich, so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm still busy looking. I'm looking for that ring. Where is the? Oh my
Yeah.
God! I've got a scar here, right where it should be. Does that mean I'm permanently in conflict?
No, definitely not. I look at scars and cuts and things like that as occurring at the time of the event, and maybe it happened when you were in a period of stress, and that's usually when we cut ourselves is when we're stressed.
Yeah.
So, but anyway.
I was jumping off a wall.
Oh dear.
In Central Park, into Central Park, and there was a piece of glass. Well, I put my hand down into a piece of glass.
Yikes.
And yeah, you know what? Now that you mention it, it was a time of high stress, but the jumping off the wall was just fun.
Right, sure.
But it was a very stressful time.
Yeah, that's how I read cuts and accidents in the hands. It's always interesting to see where it shows up too, because that's going to show where the stress is going on in your life. So yeah, it gets pretty complicated, but it's interesting. So let's talk about you and how did you get into this work? I mean, what is your background? Tell us a little bit about that.
How did I get into this work and what is my background? Let's start with how did I get into this work? Going back to jumping off the wall. I grew up in a really conflict-ridden household. I like to say I grew up in Armageddon, and I also grew up in a borderline neighborhood. So in the house, the best times in the house when no adults were there, because the adults, I love my parents, don't get me wrong, but the adults were trouble. One adult was stressful, two of them together was explosive.
Mm.
And then when I would go out into the world, I was a wealthier, lighter skinned person in a very depressed, mixed neighborhood. So I was a target. So there was no safe haven. I had a very conflict laden childhood. And my brother and I, as children, we were trying to figure out, how do you survive in this environment? I got into this work because I started to realize that children in divorce, or even in high conflict relationships, just forget, divorce is a legal state. High conflict relationships, whether the parents are together or apart, children are often the last thing that people think about. And what I've discovered in my work is, it's not that we're horrible, callous parents. I've actually been divorced. It's that a level of healthy denial happens as you're trying to sort out what's going on with your own primary relationship. If you got to keep the oxygen mask on yourself before you can put it on the children. If you start focusing on the children's pain, everything falls apart, because we're wired to put our children first. So I got into this work because I didn't want to see children go through the level of stress that I went through as a child. My heart is really with children, and I was drawn to relationships that were in high conflict, because one of the lessons of my life has been how to deal with having it feel unsafe at home, having it feel unsafe outside.
Mm.
And my background is that complete transparency, I'm a 34-year recovered alcoholic. And the first thing I wanted to do when I stopped drinking was help other people. So I worked with families and individuals and helped them recover as a volunteer for a couple of years, running groups in a mental health facility. And then I thought, wow, this is fantastic. I can help people. And I went and got a master's degree in social work. And then I worked with at-risk youth, and I worked with schizophrenics. And the short story is, actually, I became also a certified professional coach, and decided finally to focus my innate abilities and my drive in this area because of my love for children, and because it's so obvious that people in conflict don't have to have that horrendous dynamic that some families have for the protracted periods of time they do. It can actually be resolved and worked through with the right help.
Mm. That's so good to know, because I think some people probably feel pretty lost. And when you're in that conflict energy, you really don't see clearly. You're just in that energy, that emotion. So
Yeah,
so
it's like all those horrible movies, Vietnam War movies you see. Those are usually have the most graphic. I think a lot of times when we're in conflict, it feels like that. We're in the jungle, and we've lost our platoon.
yeah, that's scary.
Yeah, I think it feels like that.
Right. So, do you feel like all children of divorce are going to have a trauma? Like, is it, or do you feel that can be avoided altogether?
That is a fantastic question. And I think that, yes, the answer is, anytime that a family dissolves or reorganizes is really what's happening. It's not like it dissolves and reorganizes into another form. The children are going to experience stress and trauma. It's inevitable. The question is, how much stress and how much trauma, number one. Like, are they going to be, I was maybe a little PTSD, as a result of what happened in my childhood. Is it going to be that level? But my story, by the way, is nothing compared to some of the stories I hear. Or is it just going to be, wow, that was kind of a bad experience, and maybe I'm going to go see, I have enough self-awareness, so I'm going to get some help with it instead of being in agony. But there's always going to be some level of trauma. Now, how that trauma, is choice trauma really the right word? I believe it is possible I'm just working this through in the question. I believe it's actually possible to not have it be traumatic, to have it be what we call in the mental health world positively stressful. But in order for that to happen, children and their parents need to be engaged with their children in building the child's sense of resiliency, their resources, their social resources, their inner resources, healthy habits in their lives, so that they can manage that stress in a way that promotes growth. So trauma basically occurs when our resilience is low, we don't know how to manage it, and so we're overwhelmed, we're pushed back. I think if the awareness of how to build resilience increases, and this is something that's just going on, the concept of resilience is emerging in the last 10 years in the mental health world, and it's starting to become a buzzword, which is a good thing. If the awareness of resilience continues to rise and parents know how to build resilience in their children, I believe it is possible that you could reorganize a family without it being traumatic, just stressful.
Right.
And there's a distinction there.
Yeah.
We all say, oh my God, we don't want stress. But the truth is that we grow through stress.
Yes, that's true.
If there's no stress, we turn into marshmallows.
Yeah, right. And we can't handle the littlest things that come up. So yeah, it's important.
Well, I don't know how happy people would be if they just had no challenges. I just don't know. But we're not seeing much of that in the world.
Well,
but I do know that children who grow up in very protected, cocooned environments, who have, and I have friends who grew up this way, who have massive trust funds and resources and are very cocooned, often don't feel stress or challenged, and it's as if they don't really live to their fullest potential sometimes, depending on the values that their parents taught them and the kind of stressors that they had. So I've come to believe that some stress is a good thing.
Yes, I would agree with you on that, because we learn from challenges and we learn from, I mean, that's why we're here on Earth, I think, is to experience stuff.
Damn.
This isn't school, people. So, if the quicker you can learn, the faster and easier you'll get through stuff, but you're always going to experience things, and that's the point of life, I think.
So you've given me a new way to think about my mission. My mission is to have family transformation no longer be traumatic. What does that mean? Have it be transformative for everyone. To have it be transformative for everyone. I'm going to start working on that languaging. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
You're a great teacher.
I try. So do you feel like now I know there's a lot of couples out there who feel like they need to stay together for the children, but they actually have a really toxic relationship themselves. Do you feel like it's actually better for some couples to divorce, or what's your opinion on that?
I think I've gone back and forth on this. I mean, there are studies that show that couples that stay together, even when it's toxic, that it's better for the children because they have a sense of continuity. But I was married to a woman whose parents did that, and she definitely had her issues. I mean,
right.
She definitely had her traumas. So I don't know who they're polling when they do those studies.
Yeah.
I do think it happens on a case-by-case basis, and I think the question really isn't should we be together, should we be apart. I think the question really is the relationship working, and if not, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
And there are some people who marry a very toxic individual. Maybe they're very narcissistic, focused solely on themselves, and like active alcoholics and active addicts, for example, tend to be completely self-centered. Everyone is a tool for their own use. Being married to someone like that, if they're not in a recovery process, isn't going to be helpful in the long run, unless you really think there's a chance that they're going to recover. When someone's, regardless of whether they're an alcoholic or an addict, when someone's really narcissistic and really raging, if you feel like you're being damaged in that relationship again and again and again and again, some separation of some kind is necessary so that you can get the space to figure out what's going on here that I feel like I'm being hurt.
Mm.
And I'm wording that very carefully because ultimately no one can hurt you unless you allow them to.
Mm. Right. That's definitely something a lot of people need to learn, is taking responsibility for their lives and their relationships. And
And at the same time, when you're in that kind of relationship, you can feel like a prisoner.
yeah, it's true.
It's very hard to unhook. So
Hmm.
I don't want to say that people want that.
No, they don't. I don't think they consciously want that. I think they're just learning a lesson. You know, when I got divorced, I got into a toxic narcissist relationship, and I broke up with this guy 3 or 4 times before I finally broke it off for good. And it was very eye-opening for me to see myself, who I thought I was intelligent and, you know, all those things that you think of yourself. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, why did I get into this relationship? But I was so vulnerable at the time of my divorce. I was married for 19 years. And so to me, it makes sense that I was in that really low space. And that's why I attracted this narcissist. And I didn't even know that's what he was at first. But I learned over time what that even meant. It was really interesting. But yeah, to break that chain it takes some time.
And at the same time, you know, on the one hand, you feel like you're a victim. I was in a marriage where I felt like I was the victim. And on the other hand, the only way out is to take responsibility for being in that marriage.
Hmm.
It's this thing
Exactly.
where you feel like, I can't believe they're doing this to me. It sucks. Well, this isn't what I signed up for. You know, we were so in love. Everything was wonderful. And now it's this, whatever this is. I'm in so much pain. And look at what she is doing to the children. And then at the same time, it's like, well, but I chose into this.
Right.
So I need to choose out. Like, you can't get out of it until there's a sense of, well, yeah, this sucks. And I'm either going to hang out for it, which I'm choosing, or I'm going to bounce, which I'm
Right.
choosing. So
Yes.
it's this funny thing of, yeah, we all, you know, energetically, we all have that victim level going on. It's not a negative. It's just a place. When we're in the victim place, it's actually very protected and safe. You know, victims, like if you're being attacked by 10 people, curling up in a ball and going fetal is probably the best thing you can do. It's like, oh my God, this sucks. They're kicking the crap out of me. But you're going to sustain less damage when you do that. So
Mhm.
there is value to that energy level. But if you live there all the time, if you're having trouble bringing it to a place where you go, wow, there isn't 10 people kicking me here and I'm still fetal.
Mhm.
If you
Yeah.
don't see that, then then you choose to be in that place. You know, so
Exactly.
it's like, yeah, there's value to it, but not always.
Yes, that makes sense. So
So
with
I want to just commend you on seeing the energy that you had in that relationship and taking responsibility for your part in it and taking that step
mhm.
to move into a better place and a higher
Yes,
awareness in your life and energy level. Yeah.
absolutely. And I look at it now and it's giving me such perspective because I'm happily remarried now, and
Congratulations.
and not to a narcissist. He's actually a really great guy.
Yeah.
And you know, it just goes to show that we can get out of any situation with that determination. And I was very determined, and I did a lot of self evaluation and self growth, and I also had some people around me who helped me along the way. So it
You
was
got
really,
to have outside help when you're in.
yeah,
I had therapists, I had coaches. When I
yeah.
was getting divorced, I had somebody coach me through the divorce so that the focus was on the well-being of the children. I wanted to shred my spouse. I
Mm,
wanted to destroy her. But my coach was like, that's not going to work. You've got 2 children. Do you love your children? Yes. Well, what's best for the children? What's best for them is that I forgive her and move on, which is easy to say, but hard to do. I
yeah.
just want to be complete with this question, though, which is what's better? I think it really depends on the values of the individual. So there are individuals who hold marriage as such a high covenant that, and that commitment, their word, that they're going to be there till death do you part, that it would be worse for them to walk out than to break that. than to stay there and hold to that promise.
Yeah.
And so I need to honor that there are people in the world who have that value. And if they have that value though, and it's really not working, they're to curl up in a ball isn't going to work. They need the outside help just as much as you and I did when we were leaving our marriages for whatever reasons that we did. It's really essential. It's not just, well, I have this value that marriage is a covenant and I am never going to leave this person, even though they're emotionally abusive and whatever, and they're a drunk or whatever is going on over there. With that comes, and now I need to get empowered so that I can manage this situation for the best of everyone involved.
Exactly.
I think that's sort of key. But what doesn't work is, oh, this sucks and I don't know what to do.
Right, exactly. So at what point, I mean, I know you work with people in high conflict, but at what point would you like people to actually come and see you and work with you?
I work specifically with people in high conflict. That's my whole mission, is when people are at that point where nothing seems to be working, that's when their therapist, their divorce lawyer, their financial planner, their priest, their rabbi, their swami, their whoever, that's what their palmist, whoever they're working with says, you know what, you really need to break this pattern and develop some communication so that you can figure out what's next. So basically, I help people untie the communication knots so that there's free flow and they can figure out what the next steps are. And then, they can, and maybe they're continuing to work with their therapist or their rabbi or their swami or their palmist, or maybe they go back to them afterwards. But I'm the last resort guy.
Wow. Well, it's nice that you're out there.
Well, and because I grew up in Armageddon, I don't have that problem. Like, you can bring your stuff and I'll just go, yeah, bring some more. Because I know what it is. I've been there, and because I've done, a ton of work on myself so that I can show up for that.
Absolutely. So what do you recommend to actually divorce-proof our kids? Like, what are some of the things that parents can look for and actually take steps towards?
Yeah, so divorce-proof your kids is the workshop I have just launching. I'm doing a beta or initial version of it, and I'm recruiting parents for that right now. And that's about what we were talking about, having those children experience divorce or separation as an opportunity for transformation, not as trauma. So it's my new languaging because of you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so what that's about is, in divorce specifically, the parents need to get clear, not just between their ears, but in their heart, what the most important thing is. That the most important thing is the children. It's not that they feel that their trust was broken in some way. I was about to give you 300 examples of that. We'll just pass on that. That their trust has been broken some way, and that they're bitter and angry and that they want out, or their trust has continued to be broken. It's that the children are number one. And the workshop focuses in the beginning on how to get to that place. Because as I told you, in my own experience, I had someone saying to me that, and it sounds really easy, but emotionally, when you're at the point where you're taking apart your marriage, it's more than just taking apart your marriage. You're also dealing with all the lessons that you learned about marriage from your parents, all the lessons that you learned about marriage from the world, all the expectations of your friends and family, all of that is rolled in with it together. So there's a lot of emotional work or a lot of emotional threads is a better way to put it, to untangle, to get to that place where, all that is present, and little Johnny and Sue are what's most important here, and I'm gonna set that aside. And when my co-parent, hopefully, says something that's triggering, I'm gonna get that it's my trigger that's being triggered, not something they're doing. And I'm gonna identify what those triggers are, what are the buttons that really set me off, and I'm going to start to rewire, neurally rewire, emotionally rewire, spiritually rewire myself so that I can pause and not jump into it like I used to. And remember that little Johnny and Sue are primary. The first part is that. The second part is teaching little Johnny and Sue what it means to be resilient and giving them the tools that they need. And on the most basic level, that is, it's the PC cab. So the P is really an M, but I don't like the MC cab. I like the PC cab because I was a very not PC person for a large portion of my life. So it's important for me to remember that I'm on the PC cab now, and it's a cab, not a subway.
Okay.
Right? It's not a bus. It's a cab. It's moving, and it might cost a little more too, but it gets me there faster. You know, and the P is for prayer, meditation, mindfulness, which is a regular practice. Will help me to not get hijacked by my amygdala, get stuck in survival mindset. The C has to do with working in chunks instead of multitasking. Multitasking is unbelievably cognitively destructive, actually.
Yeah,
like focusing in chunks is what's really important. Cultivating not just empathy, but compassion is really important. Starting to not just see through other people's eyes, but also act on their behalf. The A is mental agility. So when you're doing that mindfulness or meditation or prayer, which all light up the same part of your brain and get you out of your amygdala, when you're doing that, when your triggers get pushed, you develop the ability to have the agility to step back and not jump in. And maybe you think something that's really inappropriate, but what comes out of your mouth, you develop filters basically. And the B is brakes. You gotta have brakes every now and then. So those are like the basic resilience tools, and there's more. And it's helping parents to support their children in developing those tools.
That sounds so valuable.
And in there's also helping their children have connection to outside help, connection to social groups, communities, spiritual communities, preferably, whatever that means.
Right.
You know, whatever spiritual means to you. Though I wonder if cutting hearts out of chickens is what you want your children to do. I guess that works in some communities. I don't know. I haven't seen that. But connections, friendship, having mentors, adult mentors who are not your parents, really important. Role models who are not your parents. And as a parent, that's really hard. So there are all these resilience skills that you can work with your children to develop.
Yeah.
That help them not just in the divorce process, but in the post-divorce process. Because for the children, the worst part is when the divorce is over. The parents are like, the dust is settling. Okay, I'm dating. I feel like I'm 16 again. I'm done with him. I'm done with her. And the kids are like, wait a minute, what happened to my routine? What happened to my house? The kids have been secretly hoping their parents aren't going to get divorced, and they unconsciously feel responsible no matter what. The divorce happens, so now they feel guilty, and their hope has been crushed, and their life is upside down. So that first year is where kids really get destroyed. It's where they are more likely to pick up drugs, more likely to be sexually abused, not just make sexual choices that don't feel right to them. It's where they actually will have higher levels of asthma and physical illness, because stress manifests in our bodies, and there's a possibility of mental illness and even suicide in that first year.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense.
And, you know, as a kid who went through that, guess what? I'm 34 years clean and sober, right? So I know all about that part. And I had a lot of the things I mentioned, you know, suicidal thoughts, sexual promiscuity, sexual abuse. Like I had the whole range.
Wow. Yeah.
So, you know, I know it's possible, and I know it's real.
Yeah. Talk about perspective. So yeah, this is great. So tell us a little bit about how do people work with you and how do they reach you?
So for this workshop, which is really core and missional for me right now, I am interviewing people to make sure they're a good fit. And so what that means, that they're a good fit, it means that they are willing to put their children first, even if they feel very activated. It's okay to feel triggered and activated, by the way. Like that's the human condition. but they're willing to put their children first, that they see that they have some responsibility, even though they may be feeling blame and anger and victim, which again is like human beings. That's where we go. We all have that. But that they have a willingness to work it through, and that they are really interested and committed in building that resilience in their children. And in this course, they will start to build resilience themselves.
Absolutely.
If they're very toxic people, or if they just can't get over their own anger, or if they're just sure that the other parent is completely at fault and that they did everything right, I don't want to talk to them.
Right, because they're not taking responsibility for their part.
Yeah, you can't help someone else if you don't take responsibility for yourself first. And so I have a landing page that people can go to that's on my website, richinrelationship.com, and I can give you the links for that.
Yes.
But it's richinrelationship.com/divorce proof your kids.
Okay.
And people can go there and see it. There's a video, and they can read more about it, and they can sign up for an interview. Or if they're really sure that they want this and they are good for it, they can pay for it. But I'm not going to keep their money if they don't make it through the interview.
Right, if they're not a good fit.
Right.
Okay.
I only want people who are a good fit. And this is it's a beta test. It's an initial workshop. So the value of the workshop is between $3,000 and $5,000. But because I expect these people to help me make it a good workshop, so that means at the end of each call, they're going to say, that was really good. That was terrible. we're missing this.
Right. Yeah.
I'm doing it for a really exceptionally low price, like 10% of the actual value of the workshop. Just to pay for it's going to be mostly virtual, like we're doing now. Help pay for all the video. There'll be educational content. It's for developing the educational content. Basically, that's what the money's for.
Okay, well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on the show, and really
this was so much fun.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the great work you're doing.
Let's keep going. No, I don't want to end. I love you, by the way. I think you're fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Well, maybe
you're very authentic and transparent. I hope that people, call you and work with you, because I bet you're like awesome at what you do.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah. And yeah, maybe we'll do another show sometime. I
want to know more. I want to know about how hands reflect my love personality.
Yes, my poster behind me here.
Yeah. Well, in what I do, boundaries, intimacy, emotion, courage, and attachment are all really important. So,
yes, they certainly
and communication. Yeah, that's the big one. So, maybe I need to learn how to do what you do.
Yeah, for sure.
That could be part of the pre-qualification in the future. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you very much. And remember, everyone, that you can live life with love and get out there and do it. And thanks for joining us today. Take care. Thank you for listening to Love in Your Hands. Please rate, review, and subscribe to show your support. This podcast is sponsored by loveinyourhands.com. the place to find the secret ingredients to your soulmate. Start your free Soulmate Connection membership today using the most innovative and accurate algorithm to match you to potential long-lasting love, all at loveinyourhands.com.